On today's Locked On Jayhawks, turns out the roster ain't done yet. David Coit, a 20-point per game scorer in the MAC, is joining Kansas basketball for the 2024-25 season.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up? I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio, and you can listen to the show called Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, which shout out to the everydayers, shout out for making it your first listen every day. Hopefully this is your second listen today because this is a bonus show. We're talking Kansas basketball adding another transfer portal pickup with David Coit. So we're going to get into some info on Coit, who he is, what he brings to the table, why now in terms of all this, and how exactly does he fit with the team. Be on the lookout too. We'll do another episode kind of going a little bit deeper into this and how it could possibly affect the rotation for KU. So let's start right there. Real quick info. Who is David Coit? He is a 5'11", 175-pound guard from Columbus, New Jersey. Obviously, KU's had success with a guard from New Jersey before with Tyshawn Taylor. I think, was that Hoboken, maybe? I don't know. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, he was most recently at Northern Illinois, where he averaged almost 21 points per game. So real production at a Division I level. The MAC is obviously not a Power 4, but it's, a lot better than some of those other leagues that are, at the bottom of like Ken Palm rankings and stuff. So he actually committed to Texas A&M earlier this offseason, but for whatever reason, that didn't seem to materialize and still available out there. And KU has a scholarship open, right? You have 12 scholarship players coming into this season. So you figured, okay, you have 13 scholarships, go out and add him. Obviously, that would mean that KU self-imposed scholarship reductions, which they still have one that they have to take over the next 2 seasons, has to be taken next season, but we'll talk about that momentarily because it's not that big of a deal. But you added another scorer, you added another shooter, you added another depth piece, you added another ball handler for what becomes basically another year where you added somebody very last minute. I think there are probably odds against this one being as impactful as last year's last minute ad was. You added Johnny Furphy at kind of the last minute. It was after your trip. And I think that was like middle of August, something like that. I don't know. He arrived pretty late in the game. That'll be the same case with this one here with David Coit. Again, I don't know that you expect him to be as impactful as Furphy was, but this is obviously somebody who has a lot of collegiate production in terms of what he's bringing to the table. So let's talk more about his game, some of the in-depth numbers on what he brings to the table for KU in a moment on Locked On Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we have fewer games, the Olympics winding down, the sports aren't sportsing like you want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood, whether it's preseason football, whether it's betting on Bobby Witt at home, who's hitting over like 400 at home. So just, bet on his over for hits or home runs when he's playing at home at the K, I guess. Whether it's betting on a future for who's going to win the Heisman Trophy, who's going to win the college basketball national title. You can get Kansas on FanDuel right now. You can get Hunter Dickinson as the co-favorite to win the Wooden Award. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Continuing on with Locked On Jayhawks, what about David Coit? What is Kansas getting with David Coit? So he started his collegiate career at Atlantic Cape Community College, where he went for 30 points per game, over 5 rebounds and assists per game, and led that level of basketball in scoring. So that was his first season as a freshman. That was the 21-22 season. So that would have been his true freshman season. That wouldn't have been the COVID season. So then you're talking about year 2 as a sophomore at Northern Illinois in the 2022-23 season. He was All-MAC third team. and he played 34 minutes per game and went for 15.5 points per game, just under 3 assists and 3 rebounds per game, and over a steal per game on 43, 38, 87 shooting splits. So very good score. And again, was basically listed as one of the 15 best players in the MAC that season. Then this past season, the 23-24 season, as a true junior. So if you're counting up all the years, that means he's a senior this upcoming season, and one that is in his final season of play. He'll only have one season left unless he's going to come in redshirt, which I don't know why he would do that. But anyway, this past season as a junior, he earned third-team All-MAC yet again. And as the numbers went up even more, he 37 minutes per game. He averaged 20.8 points per game, 3.4 assists per game, and 3.2 rebounds per game with 0.9 steals on about 41% shooting, 33.7% from three, 88.5% from the free throw line. Now, the field goal percentage, the three-point percentage, that doesn't sound like great efficiency, but because of the volume of threes he was taking like 9 threes per game this past season, which is pretty remarkable. And the math game that is involved with that, if you look at effective field goal percentage or true shooting percentage, both of those numbers factor in that, hey, if you shoot 40% from the floor, but all of your field goals are 3-point shots, you could look at a field goal percentage leaderboard and say, oh, this guy's shooting 45%. You're only at 40%. What gives? But it's like, but my shots are worth more. So it takes into account those. Both of those take into account like free throw shooting, like true shooting percentage does, like into the free throw line and stuff. So anyway, his effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage are like 1 percentage point different from Kevin McCullough's. And Kevin McCullough was being seen as like an All-American when he was playing for KU. And that was for Coit having to be like the guy where you're the primary option, where teams are focusing on you at Northern Illinois. Now, the most impressive thing about David Coit is this. It's the ability to take and make threes all kinds of ways at a high volume. And when I say all kinds of ways, off the dribble, off the catch, off a screen, step back, isolation, like does it in all possible ways. In 2 years at Northern Illinois, he shot 35.4% from three. Again, that sounds solid. That's above average, but it doesn't sound great. But when you factor in, he shot 8.5 3-point attempts per game, 494 total threes in 2 seasons at Northern Illinois, it gets a lot more impressive. Out of comparison, Dajuan Harris over his 5 seasons at KU, he has taken 223 threes. So less than half the amount of threes that David Coit took over 2 seasons at Northern Illinois. And so it shows how, I guess, put it this way, like in a dialed down role, you expect the efficiency to go up a little bit more at Kansas. So it allows him to kind of go off in a certain way. Like he is one of those guys who can be a microwave scorer in specific games. He had 6 games with 30 or more points in his 2 seasons at Northern Illinois. He had 25 games with 20 or more points at Northern Illinois. He had 7 games with 5 or more made threes just this past season. From February to the end of the season, Kansas as a team had just 6 games of 5 or more made threes. So like he's adding more 3-point shooting, more scoring. There will be questions about the defense, though it actually graded out pretty well on synergy. But pretty much he's a scorer. He comes in, and what is specifically his role going to be? Why now for KU? Let's talk about that on Locked On Jayhawks. All right, this episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Of course, they have zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. And you can see what the seat views in that section are going to be. Just click a random seat in the section. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app. You can kind of move it around, and it'll show you the views as you're moving the phone around like you're there, just turning your head at the stadium before you buy, so you know what you're getting into. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you to everydayers tuning into each and every show. Don't forget you can check out all across our Locked On Podcast Network for whatever you're looking for in terms of the different sports. This is a bonus episode. Thank you if you tuned into our football episode from earlier today. So why now for this edition for KU? Because this seems so late in the game. And, why not make an addition like this earlier in the game? Like, what would have changed between then and now? I think this is what it was. So it was announced a few weeks ago that scholarships would increase starting next, academic or whatever athletic calendar season in college would increase in these different sports. And for basketball, the increase of scholarships is going up to 15. And so I don't know how often KU is going to use all 15. They might only use 12, 13 in a given season. I don't know. Maybe they start giving more to like walk-ons or something like that, because at the end of the day, your 14th, 15th guy aren't going to be on the court anyway. And if they're just going to transfer in a year, like what's almost the point? But that does allow KU flexibility, because keep in mind, as part of the NCAA sanctions, they have to give up one scholarship over either this season or next season. It sounded like they were going to get rid of it this year. But because that announcement was made to get to 15, they basically view it as, oh, okay, well, if we just use it next year now, it's like next year we have 14 scholarships to give out, which is still more than we would have had to begin with. So you might as well use the scholarship this year. So I'm sure that kind of changed Kansas's tune, where they're like, okay, yeah, let's get aggressive with this. Let's see if we can make something happen with somebody who's possibly still out there. I guess there's a possibility that you could say this maybe indicates that KU isn't totally happy with the current roster, or maybe not currently happy with one of the players or something they brought in, that they're like, we want more insurance to make that possibly happen. I don't think it is. I think it is more of just that, the opportunity to, hey, there's no reason to hold this scholarship now with the new scholarship rules. And if we can add more firepower, more shooting, more depth, more insurance in case of injury or something like that happening, more competition in practice, why would we not go out and do that? And so I think that's kind of the reason of why now. How he fits in with the team, I think there's a real chance this is the Jalen Coleman-Lands role. I mention this all the time in the offseason, but I think this is the one. You come in, you shoot the basketball, you score the basketball when you come into the game. That is what you are in the game for. Now, are you going to play 10, 15, 20 minutes each and every game? I don't think so. I think so. He's a solid passer. He draws fouls. He's an elite free throw shooter. Maybe he comes in at the end of games, knock down free throws. He can knock down shots. He can knock down threes at a high level. The dude lit it up. But on the cautious side, like Northern Illinois was a bad team. They ranked 308th on KenPom last season. They went 11-20. His 2 seasons at Northern Illinois, 24-39. They ranked 333rd last season on defense as a team. So you can play him as a backup point guard. You can play him next to Dajuan. Don't necessarily love the idea of 2 small guards next to each other that small, but maybe if you're playing Houston, a team like that, it could work. You play him next to Zeke Mayo. That's a ton of shooting, and because Mayo has solid size, that works. You play him next to Shakeel Moore because you have his offense, Shakeel's more defense. He's somebody who's flexible that can play in all these ways. Now, how often is he going to play in all those ways? I don't know. Like I said, there's a chance this is Jalen Coleman-Lands role, which he had his moments. He had some games. I think like the George Mason game, they might get upset if not for Jalen Coleman-Lands and Mitch Lightfoot in that game. Maybe you have a couple moments here or there. You have a couple moments where he comes into the game and hits a key 3 at the end of the half or something like that. It is totally possible that he's going to have an opportunity to try to beat out Shakeel Moore and Zeke Mayo for minutes. I think Shakeel Moore, because of the defense and the trust he's already gotten with Bill Self, I wouldn't expect that. Maybe there's a world where Zeke Mayo, if he doesn't translate right away from the lower level to this higher level, that Coit can work into that. But like when I look at it, I'm like, okay, Zeke Mayo and David Coit, both guys who put up really good production at a smaller level, except Zeke Mayo did it on winning teams. Zeke Mayo did it with more efficiency, and he has bigger size. Coit might be quicker and more athletic in that regard, but like, I don't know. And Mayo's been here longer to trust the system. Like I trust that Mayo's going to beat him out. So if that's the case, you are playing that role where it's like, yeah, some games you might play. I don't know. Maybe it's even a competition though. If we're talking like Rakeese Passmore, if you're going to play 9 guys, does the 9th guy end up being Rakeese Passmore? Or does it end up being David Coit? Obviously different positions. Passmore more of a wing, but maybe if Bill Self says, hey, we like this guy more, it's just more 2 and 3 guard lineups out there. But regardless, if the end of this is you get a Jalen Coleman-Lands type player who's playing a role, giving you added insurance in case there's an injury over the course of the season, can come in specific games and maybe hit some threes for you. That is still valuable for this team. It's added insurance, it's added ball handling, it's added scoring, it's added shooting, all things that KU needed on last year's team a little bit more. And the best case scenario, he plays so well that it's like, we have to play this guy. And that's a great problem to kind of have. Okay, well, we'll get into more on David Coit, how the addition could affect the rotation, and more about some of his synergy numbers on another bonus episode. Maybe we'll do that on Monday here. So be on the lookout for that on Locked On Jayhawks. We're also going to get into some more KU football early next week and get into some of our early game previews. So we'll see you next time with Locked On Jayhawks. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your weekend.